silver maple. And there we're on. See? So with a bowl like this, to pronounce the now we can hear. Thank you, sir. To pronounce the asymmetry in a piece like this, it's gonna do what it wants to do. However, what I'll do is I'll rough something like this out for classic rim bowl. I'll rough this out for maybe a week because I want the initial free moisture levels to drop. Okay, I want those to drop, so a week or two, and then what I'll do, I'll put this on the lathe, turn it very thin, so it'll still be roughed out, and I want to go through the standard process of roughing out. Usually can we hear? Okay, okay, and so I do want to create a rough out first. It just won't be a rough out that lasts for 6 months to a year. It'll be more like a week to two. That drops the free moisture levels, but still has enough weight in it. The inherent weight level in it is still good, so that if I put this on the lathe, and I can still go thin, because I'll have that moisture still in there. However, by the time I get down very thin walled, down to about 1/16 of an inch, 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, that's thin enough that I can actually go through a sanding procedure. Okay, but there'll still be enough moisture in the piece that I can't finish sanding on the lathe. I have to basically sand up to about 220 and not put a finish on, and then when I get to, and then I'll give it about a week or two, the grain will rise a little bit, and then I'll start over from 220, usually go up to about 600 grit, and that's close to what you're seeing here, is something that's maybe sanded up to about 400. And when I want something like this to ship out, this would get a nice buff on the surface. I just use a Beal buffing system with something like this, and then that would go out. So this is just this has the first preliminary type of finish on it. But the kind of bowl that my customer likes and that I ship out is something like this, where the asymmetry is pronounced because it's sitting on really beautifully large tables, and they want things that look like they're floating on the surface, as opposed to a thicker bowl that sort of has enough built-in gravity within it that makes it heavier on the surface. So that's what they like. This is a company called Shackleton Thomas. They liked very light, thin pieces that look like they have a sort of a floating feeling, okay? So the joke is, like I said, catch because it floats. Ha ha ha, yeah, right. Okay, it doesn't actually float. It doesn't float. But that's the idea there. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this piece of cherry. I do have a split on the end grain right here, however, and it's a pretty good split. However, we'll be able to get rid of that in the roughing process. You can take a look right there. That's a very kingly level split. That's no good. However, it doesn't go to the cross section, but by more than, it looks like maybe more than 1/4 of an inch. So this would be the side if I had a split on it. And I'm seeing it come over further on the tailstock side. This is where I'd want to start roughing to then be able to, by the time I rough this out, rough the exterior out, that should be gone or near that. So what I'm going to do is start out with that. So my tool, is it around? Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'd like to, I'd prefer have, yeah. So again, there's a couple angles we're looking at, guys. There's 45. There's one that's about 40 to 45 degrees. That's at the nose. The other thing that's important is that the angle that you see inward set on the wing, okay? So the first grind, or the first area of importance is, let's get untangled from, that was special. That was, only I could do that. That was special. Thank you for letting me do that. No. This is ground at about 40 degrees. So that's a good place to be. I typically find that for bolt turning in general, anywhere from about 35 to 50 is appropriate for about up to 95% of the cuts that you're going to make on a bowl. So I like to speak in terms of there being a wider range of angles to use, rather than saying if you're not using 40, then you're not turning bowls. That's crazy. There's some people out there that think that, I think that's a little too dogmatic for the way I turn, because there's always a grind that's fit to the application. So the one here fit to the application is one where I'm going to have a wider swept back, a longer swept back wing. One where the other angle that's important here is how inward set ground the wing is. So that's important too. I'm going to pass around another tool that is unhandled. And it's a bowl gouge, but it's not ideal. The wings look really pretty, but it's too inward ground, and we're going to take a look as to why we wouldn't want to use it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. It's buried. It's buried under sandpaper. That's actually really funny, because that's where a tool like this belongs. And but anyways, this is actually a tool I would not use, but is a sample. You can see how inward ground the wings are. Okay. And what I'd have to do in order to make proper contact is I would just have to rotate the tool. If we can take a look over here on the tool rest, somewhere around here. There you go. So if I have wings that are too inward ground, so there's a wing right there, but if the wings are too inward ground towards the flute of the tool, I just have to I have to close the flute significantly in order for that edge to actually make contact. And that's okay if I'm shear scraping, because if I'm doing that, it almost looks like the unsupported edge is cutting. So thank you, good angle there, and that would make sense. However, you want to have a fairly steeply ground wing beginning, and the sweep is from the heel of the bevel on the wing up to the cutting edge itself. So what I'm looking for is something that's maybe ground from the heel of the nose of the near the nose of the bevel, that region right there, just below. Thank you. And up here to the actual cutting edge, the nose, anywhere from about 35 to 50 is okay. That's a very wide range, because we're talking about the application of stock removal. That story changes on the interior when I need to actually take a much steeper tool to be able, a much steeper ground bevel from the interior portion, about mid-third, mid-section, and continue all the way around. So that's to say that a 40 or 45 degree grind might be good for doing that shaping up to about the mid portion of a piece. I have to switch over to something that's about 60 degrees to be able to ride the bevel. I'm sorry?
Why did you say this grind here is not?
So that's not preferable because although it looks good, it's a deceiving grind. It looks nice. It's pretty. It was ground on a jig, but the inward set angle from is ground inward towards the flute. Too extreme, and so that's about on that, maybe it's close to 35 degrees inward set. So that's very, very. So being able to make a cut like that means that I have to close the flute extremely in order to make a cut. And if I'm roughing stock out with something that's too inward ground like that, I might make a cut, but I'm going to be and I might make some dust and shavings and chips. I won't make a really beautiful shaving because that unsupported edge is very close. I'm gonna also likely hit that edge, and you're gonna have some bad tear out. Whenever you're turning a bowl, you don't ever want it, and unless you're shear scraping, you never want the unsupported edge that close to that cut at all. It's not a good thing at all. And the other thing is all my tools are freehand sharpened, in that I don't use jigs at all. And that's not something I'm saying, oh, that's special. If you don't use jigs, you're better. There are great turners that use jigs. It's just that for me, I find that I have greater advantage in grinding freehand. That's how I started out. That's what I learned. And so that's a matter of preference and opinion, not of fact. So when someone says, if you're shaping an exterior and someone says it's not ground at 40 degrees, you can't do it, they might be crazy. Because when it comes down to it, it takes more than having a properly ground tool to turn wood. You also have to have the correct body mechanics. The tool is an extension of the body, and it's not something where where the angle or the brand or the type of it doesn't come down to angles and the brand of the tool. Okay, it really doesn't. It comes down to the body mechanics and this tool being an extension of that body when we're making our cuts. I'm going to go ahead and do a freehand grind on this because this is, even though it's sharp, not sharp enough to start for a cut. We're gonna go ahead and do that real quick. Before that, let's take a look at the angle again. I said 40 degrees about right here. That's within a range of acceptability. Okay, a range of acceptability. And on the inward set wings here, they should be ground from about, if we can take a look somewhere over here, they should be ground from anywhere from, so that's the heel right there, up to the wing. They should be inward set ground this should be about 55 to 60 degrees. And I find that what that then means is then becomes a commentary on how steep the wing is. So the steeper ground wing, the better shaving you're going to get. You're going to get a nice thicker shaving, and I don't have to rotate the tool over so extremely, putting the unsupported edge in the way of the cut, which can be the issue. Yes, sir.
How do you measure the angle on the wing?
On the wing, yeah. Sure. So what I do is I just use. I'm a little old school, and I'm young. I'm a young old school is what you can call me. I'm young old school. I like to do it this way, and so what I'll do is I'll just find that on this side right here, I'm just going to take my gauge, And again, this is this is the only thing you can purchase from Harbor Freight. Anyone knows. This is just Harbor Freight right here. This is something very cheap and simple. Other than that, if you can plug it in, you didn't win. You just lost. Okay. If you can plug it in, you didn't win at Harbor Freight. I think that's nothing new there. I think anyone in here, y'all better know that, or I'll be, come step into my office. So let's see. So that's where I'm going to be here. I'm going to read that angle. I set it right there, and that's perfect. That's 55 degrees. So anywhere from about 50 to 60 degrees, if I can make that reading on both sides, then we're in business. I know that that's looking good on both sides. That's great. So when you look over the tool, you shouldn't see those wings ground really inward set. If I took that tool out here and put it up here, which I'm not going to do, but either way, thanks, Phil. Thanks for not stealing it and adding it to your collection. That ain't worth taking.
I needed a new SKU. I'm waiting for
Yeah.
you to pass it around.
That ain't.
Forge that out into a SKU.
Yeah, that tool would work better as a SKU, which doesn't that could.
Blacksmith down there, I want to visit him, so yeah.
Okay, that's so funny. But if we took that tool here, we would be looking at something that's ground at about maybe 30 degrees, which that's two inward set. That would be two inward set, and that means that it's not a tool we want to use. We want to have a much steeper grind from the heel to the top of the wing where the edge is. That's a much better grind. I'm going to show you how I grind freehand. There's a platform freehand grinding and naked freehand grinding. What I call naked freehand grinding is something where basically I'm using the left hand or the right hand to make we can, yeah. Okay, we do that, and I'll show you guys how I sharpen a tool like this. All right. Okay. Sure. So when I'm doing this, I'll go ahead. I like to when I'm grinding a bowl gouge, I like to make sure that I'm maintaining being the body square to the actual grinder itself. So I don't want to stand all the way over here. I don't want to stand all the way over here at 45. I'd rather stand straight up to the grinder. So it doesn't matter what side you grind first, but typically if I'm going to grind the left wing of a bowl gouge, I'm going to start with the left hand. I'm ambidextrous. I'll do it with the left hand first, like this. And what I'm doing is I'm basically pivoting on with my right hand's fulcrum, right in here, just the fingers right there, and grinding it this way. And I'm just I'm basically finding that angle, bringing it around. And I'm typically testing to know exactly where I'm at, just with this guy right here. And then a little bit later we can talk about how I would reset an angle and do that. But first, it's more important that I just get this set up and ready to go. So start here, I sweep up towards the top of the wing, and bring it back around towards the center of the nose. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll off at the nose, like that. And so what you'll see here, that's a freehand ground tool. If I can, right there. But anyways, that's a good grind right there. And do the other side. Start at the mid portion of the wing, bring it to the top of the wing where it meets the flute of the tool. And I'm done with that grind. That's a good one too. So what I'm looking to do is that when I'm grinding the left wing, I'm swinging towards the center here. The reason I start at the wing and not the nose is that if I start at the nose, I'm placing too much pressure on it, and being that there's far less steel this close to the flute where it's not as wide, it's going to split right in half. And well, it'll split that nose in half, and you have devil horns on both sides. You got horns on both sides. Okay, it's not what I want to do. You always have to, whether you're using a jig ground, whether you're grinding with the jig or whether it's freehand, you got to start with the wing, swing it towards the center. Other side, start the wing, swing it towards the center, and that's just a little overview of that. Okay, so that's going to be fairly sharp, and we'll go ahead and get this going. Now, what I've done is I've changed the torque level on this to be at higher torque. This lathe doesn't have monster bearings on it, but it's good enough for a bowl like this size, especially with cherry. We've got softer material, so this will be fine. I'm putting it on the range of 50 to 1200. No, you're good. No, 50 to 1200. That'll be good. And I'll be right. That'll be the cut right in over here.
Which way?
back over the blank. So,
All was up.
yeah, over the blank. Cause I got another camera to get the end. That's good.
Okay.
You want it up some or is that good? Should've let you do it. I was trying to help you, hey.
We know what you're good for.
Oh, yeah, brutal. Guys are brutal. I love it. At least you guys like each other. Oh, okay, so there we go. How about it? We made it. We made it this far. Oh my gosh, Gerald. You are the video guy. Should I be nice to you or not? I don't know. I don't know.
I gotta put nice little smile.
There's no way. Oh, don't even try. Okay. Good stuff, guys. You guys are a blast. So we're going to start pretty slow. Slow enough that I want to see if I can get beyond or maybe at 800 RPM. Let's get this drill out of the way. Don't need that. Definitely don't. The drill portion of this blank didn't work out so well for pretty funny reasons. But anyways, so if I'm making these cuts, what I don't ever want to do on a side grain blank that's out of round, which again, this is a hunk of wood. This is not a blank. We're turning it into a blank, so that then we can to actually turn some wood legitimately. So what we want to do first is never start here. Take a look at that. Now that's just with the bevel. You can see the flute. I don't want to start here. If I start at the very center of the blank, all I'm doing is dragging into a wall of, even though it's all side grain, I don't want that jackhammering effect to go down. Far better is it to not start on the exterior, but to just first make a cut straight in like this. And what I'm doing is I'm going to apply pressure down onto the tool rest, not into the material. Just to true that up, okay? If I have one area that's trued up, what that then means is I can take the tool through space, not outer space, but rather area that's not basically shattering against the heel of the tool or the bevel or the heel of the tool and moving the tool forward. Rather, that first initial cut for a blank that's out of round is then a commentary on being able to start on my exterior first here. This would be considered a left-handed cut. One where I'm starting here, right there. So that's with the left hand on the top of the tool near the ferrule of the tool. I don't want to start all the way back here. I do want to have one point of contact with the forefinger on the tool itself, and just below right there. The right hand really is just there for support. I like to cut both left and right-handed. Again, if a blank this size, even though it's not terribly large, was spinning on the low torque, high speed, I'd be bogging the motor down pretty bad. Okay, for a lathe like this is a decent little lathe. This is something where you're going to want to make sure that you have the high torque, low speed on, and you'll probably be starting when in this stage on a blank that's fairly roughed out, hunk of wood, not a blank, no higher than 800 RPM. Okay, so just know some of those things. Go ahead and just true this up, and again, we're looking to eliminate a split that we have in here, and we will get rid of that here shortly. First, we're turning this into a blank, which means I have to true up the actual exterior, the bowl exterior. That's exterior, as I see it, is just what is across the bed. Okay, so we'll do that first. So first cut was just to true this up, to true that area up, so that I could initially start with a cut that was nice and clean. Okay. I could just hold it right there. The body is making the cut, okay? What you'll see is I stopped at the very end. There's a reason why. If I go to the very end, what will happen is this, and I might as well show it. I'll show half of what is left for material I need to take off. So right here, if I just go to the very end, I lose fiber support, and I just tear out. So it's actually far better to make that cut first, and then come around the other side. And instead of tearing the fibers out, this would be where the rim will be. Come around this side and just true that up. Now I can go back to true up the face. So we've done the exterior. Now we're working on the face. Okay? And again, not going to start here, and I'm not going to even bring the edge in because that'll dull it very fast. I'm not going to start here and drag. like that. Rather what I'll do is I'll start here and make my push cut inwards. I find that making the cut left-handed is a little easier for me. You can do right or left-handed. You'll find that in wood turning, regardless of you being left or right-handed, you'll do things left-handed if you're right-handed as well, for different reasons at different times. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do this right-handed. Oh, sorry, left-handed. There we go. Now it's easing up. And let's go ahead and see if we can raise the speed a little bit. Usually the first diameter that we want to knock down is across the bed so as to then be able to make some faster cuts. And it looks like I'll be able to really speed this up to where I want to be. So being around 1,000 RPM is ideal in this particular stage. So now we'll be able to make some shavings. Yeah, this stuff is dry for sure. Whew, it's dry. So here we go. So what I'm looking to do now is, so we're basically just creating a blank. We don't have one yet. What I want to do is take a look to see where that split is. So it's right in here. So it looks like I'll lose this knot and or this bark inclusion, which is kind of a cool little area. But I want to get beyond that point. And it looks like the split that I had at the top is near the rim is just about gone, but I'll be getting rid of that soon. Now I'll switch over to do a right-handed cut. Why not? I'm right-handed after all. Might as well do it right-handed, right? Let's do it. Pretty good speed right now. We're at about 1,000 RPM. Now, when I'm doing this, what I don't want to do is when I'm facing undulated material, very undulated material right here, what I don't want to do is this. I don't want to actually take this in here and push harder against that. What I want to do is absorb the cut with a bar stock, and that's sufficient for this. So using a 3/8 isn't really sufficient. It's better to use 1/2 inch or 5/8 when I'm roughing out an exterior like this. And when I get a little bit of resistance, you don't push more into the material, because that's going to be the first tendency. Is you're going to fight. It's going to start biting, and it's going to start catching, and then you'll start to fight it. So instead of fighting it, what you do, just let the cut be absorbed through thinking of the tool as an extension of the body. So you're starting right here. It starts to bite. You don't push in more. What you do is you've had the tool against the side, transition to the right. So what makes the difference is the pressure and the weight that's going down on the tool rest, not pushing further into the material. That'll happen on its own. You don't need to worry about that. So let's go ahead and maybe go around to left-handed cut. That's pretty decent. So what I'm looking to do now is take a look at where, again, that split is. I want to get rid of that split. And I'm actually glad we have one on here, just for the sake of being able to know that we need to just get past it, and we're on our way. Very good. So I'm not ready to make dedicated push cuts yet to actually clean the surface. What I'm aiming to do at this point, just get rid of the split. So these are all still just roughing cuts. Make sure that that's really tight. And now I'll go maybe a little faster. The thing is that when I'm turning on a face, when I'm turning near a face, you don't ever want to have the tool rest out here to make cuts here. You never ever do this. Too much overhang. You have to make sure that the tool rest is generally in three different positions, not at once. If I said it once, that would have been a little mind-blowing. Like, no. All the different times. I feel like I'm going to be collecting shavings for 6 months. In 6 months, I'll be like, oh, cheer it, Magnolia Wood Turners. Yeah. Oh, Magnolia, yeah. So anyway, let's keep going, just getting rid of that split. We're almost there. Let's see if that did it. I'm going to just stop intermittently to see and check that it is gone. And not quite. We're making our way. Oh, this cherry is this cherry's not being so cheery. Come on now. But we should be getting under that split fairly soon. Okay, let's see what we got now. So we're just shaping. This is not now a commentary on final shape at all. We're just I roughed out a little bit of a tenon in there. And okay, we're getting really close there. Looks like a few more cuts. We got it. And then we'll be able to really pretty this thing up. Again, finger control is key. I have to remember too that when I'm on the smaller diameters down here, the inertia is not going to build up to spin near as fast on the smaller diameter than the top. So down here, the pressure remains the same down onto the tool rest, but the amount of pressure that I'm applying inward is very light, okay? So you have to slow the feed rate of the tool down in the smaller diameter regions right in here, okay? You can speed the cut up a little bit faster out here. Split-wise, where are we at? Let's see where we're at. Okay, looks like we eliminated it. That's great. That's good. So that's good. Now the thing is that for the exterior shape, I am not looking to make a final shape yet. I'm looking to rough this out, get a decent form that I'm leaning towards being happy with. We're going to make more or less an open form shape. But what I don't want to do is decide that in this process between centers that I'm going to create the most perfect form ever, and that I want to create essentially the final form now. There's a reason why. Does anyone know why? Why that would be? Quiet as a library. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly the reason. So that's one of the main reasons is that if I even if I make the most perfect tenon and most perfect shape, it's not a commentary on the fact that I will be gripping onto a chuck that will more than likely move the material to be off-centered enough that I'll still have to true it up again. So there's two times you true a piece up. One in the roughing out process, and when you're creating a tenon, now the tenon needs to be perfect, but the shape just needs to be suggestive of what you want the actual final form to look like. Because when you turn it around into the chuck, inevitably when you squeeze on those fibers, it's going to move the piece around a little bit. That then means that you'll have to true the piece up a second time before you hollow in. You say, well, okay, that makes sense, but sometimes it might be perfect. Rarely. Like 98% of the time, when you grip down, it's gonna be off center. Reason why that matters so much, and why you should by the time you start hollowing out, you should be entirely trued up, is because in the sanding process or whatever finishing process you apply while it's on the lathe, you don't want to be in a situation where it's already out of round when you dove in with the hollowing, all to then create a greater amount of streaks with the sandpaper because it's moved around so much. So in the hollowing process, even if you true up the exterior a second time and it's perfect without any out of roundness, the amount of pressure that you impart in the hollowing portion of it will still make this piece off round a little bit. No matter what, it'll still be out of round a little bit towards the end. So you want to minimize that the most that you can now, okay? So right now, we're just shaping a little bit, and now we're beyond the split, so that's great. Looking good here. Why don't we now take maybe one more pass, and let's go straight to the top. That's at about 1200 RPM. Well, that's the full speed. This will go at the moment. This will be a left-handed cut. So that would be the kind of roughing cut that I was making if this was going to be a roughed out bowl. Now I don't need all this material in here. This little nub, I want to get rid of that. Now I do want to keep it because what will help me to now a portion of it. I don't need all that material in there. I'm going to get rid of this larger nub section that doesn't need to be there. However, I do want a small one that I can still have the tailstock mark protrude into for the sake of knowing where my center will be if I am to at the very end of the piece finish it and make and know where my dead center is to be able to cinch up onto either a friction drive or a jam chuck. Okay. So having that center there, having that center mark is very important. Having a nub that size, again, only is there because of all the roughing out in order to get underneath that split. But I do want to have maybe an eighth to a quarter of an inch of that reserved for a tailstock mark. I do want to have that there. Again, I don't want to have, and that's for the reason of if I were to have that mark on the base of a tenon, right, on the underside of a tenon, I want to be able to ensure that if I'm making if I go a little bit too deep in my hollowing process, I still have the full length of the tenon available to be able to use. If I have a mark there and I went too deep, and then I take the base off, right, and I true that area up, I might still have that mark there. I turn around and have a dot. If I have a little platform of maybe about maybe just a little bit larger than the diameter of the live center right in here, the actual center itself, I want to encapsulate that mark so that it's not a part of the tenon, so that I have the full length of the tenon still as material in the end. If I hollow a little bit too deep, so I always want to account for having a little bit more material left, but I don't need that much. Then that's just an offcut at this point. So now we're looking at a blank. Okay. Don't need that. And that should be good. So what I mean is that I don't want that. I don't want that. I do want a little nub right there, though, however, and that's going to be fine. The other thing is that oftentimes people will forget to do. On a bowl, on a face of a bowl, on the other side, you do want to true this side up too, okay? Why do you suppose that might be? Well, the answer to that would be that I want to be able to see that if that being that the grain orientation places the end grain is on this side, I have end grain here, and then two sections of side grain, but I had a split that went all the way up to the top here. I want to ensure and check that if I had a split and it went all the way up here, that I can remove it. I can make sure that if and when, here we are, if and when, if I true this side up to reveal cleaner grain, that split does not go through. So I want to make some fairly clean cuts on this side as well. And why not add a little bit of tailstock support? It's never a bad thing. There. And so that now, in this area, that will encapsulate, or rather gather, the 1/8 inch mark that I would have here. I'll have a tenon here so that if I go a little bit too deep on my bowl, if that were the case, it still will not affect the fact that this mark will be gone. It will not be in the piece. So that's very important, actually. So now here, what I'll do is I'll true up the face on the other side. Best thing before I start actually making any real serious cuts is to true this up anyway, okay? That means that I'll have no vibration left in this piece in theory, okay? That's the whole idea. Wow, I wonder, I don't think it's going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute for me to find anything in there. So, let's true this up. It's a left-handed cut. If I was making a right-handed cut, it would look something like this, coming in that way. Now, I'm just truing up the face. Makes life a lot easier in the long run. So so again, these wings are ground more, are very steep and not too inward set ground, which allows me to keep the tool up. So up like this. Well, I'm just trying to, if you guys can see it. Okay. Yeah. There we go. So yeah, what's nice about this is that when I make this cut, I don't have to, it's not, the wings are not so inward set that I can actually keep the tool pretty straight up with the flute facing upwards. So that's fine and well. Let's take a look to see if that split's entirely gone. That does matter. And let me, my phone out of harm's way. There we go. And looks like we're good. So that's great. That means now what I can do is take one push cut uphill. And what I'll do in this case is use something a little bit different. Typically when I make a push cut uphill, what I'm aiming to do is I want to get the cleanest cut I can. This is kind of a very different grind. I like to have a grind with the heel sweep very much out of the way. This is ground at about 20, maybe 20, 30 degrees, and then the actual edge here, the cutting edge, that's near, that's probably near 50, 60 degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
So right in there, that's where I'll be making that cut. We got it? Okay, very good.
I don't know.
So right about here is going to be okay. Start a cut. It's not a matter of life or death that the exterior is perfectly trued up right now. I'm just looking for something that gets me a nice surface just so I can take a look at what I have and basically plan on not having too much work to do when I turn the piece around. Probably only a little bit of shear scraping and that'll be it. So let's do maybe one push cut uphill. And these are now the kind of shavings that I want to see right in here. This stuff right here, that's the stuff. Not chips, but actual shavings. That's a pretty good cut, and very clean actually. And I also have a caliper measurement already established. I should have one. Right in there. I actually found it. Wow, that was an act of God nearly that happened. And I believe that that's the interior. That'll be a pretty good measurement. Let's go ahead and go underneath just a little bit. I want to make sure that I'm not too large, too small. And there we go. That's a good spot. That's going to be where our tenon is. I can go ahead and go back to the larger bowl gouge here. Typically for a tenon, the length, I want to have maybe around 3/8, close to that. One of the things that I see with too many bowls often is I see, and I'm just going to go ahead and true up the base. Something that I see often too much actually is I see a shoulder area. And that would be this area right here. That's too wide. That's too wide. You don't need a shoulder that's that wide. All you need is about 1/8 of an inch. And I would say that I wouldn't go by a specific number or length. I just go by the width of the face of your jaws. So the face of these jaws are probably about 1/4 of an inch, maybe close to that. That means you really don't need much of an area of the flat portion of those jaws to abut against the shoulder by much more. They're really no more than that. All I found is that you need about 1/8 of an inch. So here, there, maybe right there, and that's going to be that'll be a good margin for where I'm at. Good metric. So now I'll go ahead and true this up, and I'm going to connect that platform area here of the shoulder, sweep that uphill a little bit, because what I'm looking for in terms of a curve is a curve that breaks really sharp from the rim. And that's looking like a pretty decent form right there. I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do now, and finish, not what I want, but the form itself, that's what I'm seeing. I'm not looking for a perfect form at the moment. If a perfect form means that I'm saying that there will be no vibration incurred through the overall piece when I make contact here and compress. That I cannot rely on that. So all you're looking at in this process is to make a form that will resemble the final form. And you want to make it pretty, but it doesn't have to be entirely void of splits. You want to get rid of all the splits, and you want to do that. But all you're looking to do is just make a pretty decent form at the moment, something that's nice and sharp. Happy with that. So I can probably go ahead and do this. Remove that. Let's go ahead and screw that tenon up. Get into the corner. That's where I'll go ahead and roll the tool over. Make a nice flat shoulder. What you saw there was a little catch from the unsupported edge. With two inward set of an angle on the wing, that will always catch. Okay, it's always going to catch. So I'm going to go ahead and make a slight dovetail. Doesn't need to be extreme, just slight. Take it into the corner, roll the tool forward, and that's looking good. If I'm so inclined and I want to, I can basically sweep this out one more time, getting me to an area to where I can begin a decent push cut. Again, not for the sake of making a perfect exterior, but if it does, again, don't rely on the fact that when I clamp down on this tenon, that's going to be that it's not going to move. It probably will, and we're going to take a look. One of the worst things that happens is when I try to make a point on something, and it's kind of funny where I'm trying to show warpage and it doesn't warp, like like a warp. Do the thing that's wrong. I want it to do the wrong thing, but it doesn't sometimes. So here we go. Now we'll start the bevel rubbing here at the very base. And what we'll do is we'll take this. Guys can pass this piece around here in a second. I want you guys to see the finish on it. It should be fairly burnished. Again, this is a finished surface, but I'll probably be making some shear scraping cuts after this, after I chuck this up. Okay, so that's nice and clean. Let's go ahead and pick up a little ridge right in there. And take that all the way to the rim. All you need here, again, this is finger control more than anything. It's not something where I'm, again, making really heavy aggressive cuts, not being brutish about it. The other thing is that when I'm using a tool like this is a much smaller tool. This is a 1/4 inch. You say, why are you using a tool so small? Well, it's not about the size of the tool in this way. It's really more about the fact that when I make this cut, and that's a good shape and form. I'm happy to see that. That's nice and clean. So you guys can see that you won't see any tear out on this piece. You'll see maybe some burnishing, but I'm going to pass this around so you guys can take a look at this. That's what you want. That's a good example. But back to the gouge and the width of the flute. So something like this, if I was making a tool that was ground, a tool with the too wide of a flute like this, this is going to, so a half inch width of flute, it's going to cut too wide of a shape, too wide of a chip. Okay, I want to cut a much narrower chip, and that will indicate that if I'm doing that, I'm usually always going to get a cleaner cut. So for an exterior and interior shaping, I don't mind using about a 1/2 inch to 5/8, something that's taking a lot of material off. But when I get underneath that, I'm going to want to switch and transition over to something like a 1/4 inch to 3/8. It's not going to cut as wide of a chip. And I want you guys to take a look at the surface of this. That's what we want to see. So I'll get this set up. You guys can, by the time I get done, that's what you want to see for an exterior. Okay? It's nice and smooth. It's burnished surface. Nice burnished surface. Make sure to pass it. There's other people in the room. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Just having fun. Stop having fun. Yeah. That's what you want for a surface right there, guys. And there's one Tommy bar. There's two. Wow. I'm getting lucky now. Okay. Someone say nap time? Yeah, right. There we go. Yeah, I know, right? Seriously. Oh, goodness. Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay. Good enough. So you see the curve on that's very similar to this. Here's my bowl of shavings for you guys, all to the ground. So it's all right. So what you're seeing is a very similar curve. That would be more of an inward set curve, one where the break of it's directly from the rim, and it's just a full parabolic sweep, which just means an uninterrupted line that doesn't have any bumps or dips in it. Solid line, okay? So if it is out of round, you want it when I put it in the chuck, you want it to be out of round enough that you don't have to make any heavy roughing cuts, but rather just can shear scrape over the top. Then you can start diving in, okay? Wow, I'm really decorating myself nicely. Oh, goodness. Yes, sir.
You stop it again, probably a 16th of an inch from the top.
Yes.
You can go back to the other side and get that end grain, or not tear out the inside of it.
Yes, that's typically, that would be something that you can do. Yes.
I noticed you on that one, you stopped it.
Yeah, I stopped. Yeah. So I didn't take that all the way out. There's a little bit, so it's kind of sharp at the top. So I'm going to turn, I'll turn it around, and then we'll talk a little bit about the grain orientation if we do need to make a downhill cut, which is likely. A lot of bolt turners, which I would be considered I do a lot of things in wood turning, but mostly just classic traditional forms. Nonetheless, side and end grain. But we'll take a look at this here in a second. And, yep. I get actually time to dust off. That's good. Nice. How about that? You never actually fully dust off. I don't, at least. Look at me. Yeah, doesn't work. Okay.
Wait till you get married.
And so the next few things we're going to look at, guys, is first, I'm not going to have this at demon strength speed. It's going to be pretty slow. Thank you, sir. Yep, got it. And, yep, that's a good curve. Happy with that form. No real tear out to speak of. Maybe some burnish marks, but that's it. So here, and that's a good tendon right there. You don't want to ever see tendon where you have a gap between the face of the jaws and the shoulder. You do that. If you do see one, that's called failing the dollar bill test. The dollar bill test is where you take a flat dollar bill, put it between the face of the edge, the face of the jaws, and the shoulder. And if you can fit a dollar bill through there, then you have too much of a gap. You got to recut the tendon. Okay, so that's just something to know. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of that. Here we go. So make that nice and tight. We can expect now to, if I go down to a slower speed, to really see or accentuate how out of round this piece is. Okay, so let's see. If I slow this down, oh yeah, it's out of round a little bit. Now that we have access to the face, though, let's go ahead and entirely true up the face on this side. You can see that if I'm spinning that slow, it's out of round by maybe close to, and I mean this curve over here more so than on this side. This side is a little out of round due to the eccentricity here, the undulated surface here. But you can still see that's off by maybe a little less than a 16th of an inch. It's barely there, but you can. If I speed this up, you see the eccentricity is lost, and then you can say to yourself, see, I made a perfect form. I don't need to true that up again. No, you do. You got to make sure that you slow it down to a speed of about 200 to 400 RPM, and you'll see it's out of round. You will need to make some shear scrapes on the exterior. But this is trued up enough that I can go ahead and continue the area that I haven't touched yet, so that essentially I'm dealing with a blank that I can apply correct cuts with. Okay, I always want to start making my best cuts with a piece that's entirely trued up. And I trued up, not chewed up. Okay, don't chew it up, true it up. So let's go ahead and do that. True it up, not chew it up. And a little light on the subject. There's our subject. Is the light better with or without? I was going to say better turn on again. I was about to stay there. Okay, so here we go. Now, this is very sharp. What I'll do is come back the other way, like this. So, Andy, that's to answer your question on this side, is to say that I wanted to just true that up a little bit here, and I waited to turn it around rather than go to the other side and do it on the other step, okay? So speed this up, pretty good speed. Now, So this isn't as heavy as the cuts that we should have to take when we're actually truing up this exterior again. Should not be. The other cut that I can make is towards the center. Now, if I want to do this, you have to make sure that when you're making this cut, it's very light. You don't want to make a heavy cut right here. Very light. And I don't use the terminology rub the bevel. I like to say let the tool glide across the surface, or I like the term brush better. Brush is better, you know? You never saw anything, well, I mean, you typically don't see a painter brushing like this, you know? They're brushing and making a nice, it's almost like someone playing a ride cymbal who's a drummer. It's a nice, light feeling. It's something that involves finesse. One thing I have to be careful, though, is because when I'm making a cut this way, all the fibers are now facing across the grain, so every cut that I make inward is all across cut, and that's actually the correct way to cut. This is okay. I just have to make sure that because I'm now there's a part of my cut that's now touching the end grain fibers. I don't want to take off any more than about 1/4 of an inch here. If I take off too much going straight into the end grain fibers, it's going to dig a little bit too much. But I do want to flatten this area. I'm not trying to make it pretty yet. Just chewing it up still. Okay. So, now we'll take a look at doing some shear scraping on the exterior. Come back here. We're going to be on that side, on the back side. Okay. And this wouldn't hurt to do a quick little sharpen. Do that. There we go. And the question is that if I apply that cut, the question is how out of round is it to then it be appropriate for me to apply a shear scrape. So that's just the bevel, and all I'm doing with the bevel rubbing back there is gauging how out of round it is so that I can decide, do I need to make a push cut or should I make a shear scrape? And a shear scrape is preferred. That then means that because it is a type of scraping cut, it's not one that should require the weight and force of the tool against my body as if to make a roughing pass. This is one where it's going to be very light to the touch, just like this. Trouble is I'm a little bit too far away. I need to close that gap, if I can, and make a cut over here. So now I'm at 45 degrees inward, like this. And what I'm doing with that cut is I'm not open like this. That's an open flute cut right there. We want to close the flute so it almost looks like the unsupported edge wants to make the cut. The closer that we close the flute, the better the cut is going to actually be. Okay? But I have to make sure that when I make that cut, I drop the handle. It's not a 90-degree cut. If I'm at a 90-degree angle or plane right there, even if I'm over at a 45, that's not good enough. I have to drop the handle to create that really nice shear plane. And it looks like I'm going to be just needing to shear scrape this. That's what I at least think so far. That should be good. The curve is there. I'm basically just highlighting the curve. So that's a good cut right there. Now, I'm not burnishing the surface doing this, but I am creating a nice shaving. And the shaving that we want to see now looks something like this, okay? It's very, very thin, especially for dry material. You'll still see it. You'll still see a shaving, okay? Let me see if I can get in there, about right there. Can you guys see that okay? That's the shaving we want. It should be very thin. It should be about less than a 1/16 of an inch, and it should be the kind where you can roll it up into a little ball like that. Little shaving snowball, okay? It's a wood turning snowball. Now go back here and finish that shear scraping. Again, tool is an extension of the body. I'm looking to just create some really fine cuts. Right now I'm on the bottom third portion of the piece. When I say bottom third, I'm typically looking at a bowl, or that implies looking at a bowl in more than one section, I'm looking at the bottom area right here, so bottom third, about mid third, and then the top. So that then means that because I'm inboard across the bed towards the headstock at 45 degrees, there's going to be a point that I reach that I won't be able to make sufficient cuts anymore, and the tool rest will then obstruct my ability to make this nice shear scrape. So I actually have to move it over a little bit here, and then move the banjo in a little bit there. So now I shouldn't be so far off the tool rest that I can't make this cut. There we go. That's a nice continuation of that line. Again, it looks like that unsupported edge is cutting, but it's not. It's very close though, okay? So you could argue that, well, wouldn't the inward set gouge that I showed you that I passed around be appropriate? No, you don't want to use that tool for really anything. That's just an example of what not to use or to ever have in your shop. And just know that that's a little too inward set. This is nice. If you have the wings ground at about 50, 60 degrees, that's a really great place to be, so that when you turn the tool over and you're making that shear cut, you're hitting that vertical plane of about 50, 60 degrees, which is very steep, meaning that I don't have to overcompensate and really turn over. I'm just about right there. And I find that the steeper the wing, the steeper the wing, the stronger the overall cut is when I'm making my shear scrape. So now we can adjust this a little more, move that up towards the rim. And this is now a right-handed cut. I was doing it left-handed before. And that's just a little out of round right there. Once I get beyond that, that noise will kick out. So that is a little out of round right through here. Again, we can expect to see that. We always want to get rid of all of that eccentricity before we actually dive into hollow out, okay? Always want to do that. So I find that, again, what I've learned to do over time is turn left and right-handed. There are times when I find that turning left-handed is more advantageous to where I'm at. This is a left-handed cut. The right-handed cut is right here, okay? So you just do what makes you feel comfortable. But it's basically like we're almost brushing the surface. And what would be more ideal is if I had a larger chuck, wouldn't have as much vibration. This is still okay though. This will still work. And what I'm looking to do is make contact right at the mid portion of that wing. Right at the mid portion. Now what's happening again is that the tool rest is getting in the way. I now have to go for almost near a 90-degree position right here, and that will have trued my exterior up really nicely. Let's see what I got so far. All I was looking to do here is just true it up. So yeah, that's looking nice. That's a nice form, no tear out. I'm looking at the end grain, but I'm also looking at another spot. I'm looking at a spot where the side grain meets the end grain. Our concentric rings of our end grain are running right here, okay? That means that into the left and right of it, I have side grain fibers, face grain. And so what I have to do is take a look and very closely examine that what I'm seeing is I have no tear out whatsoever, and I don't have any, no tear out. So what I'm aiming to do now is just get rid of that little shadow effect that I have here, which is from the prior chucking, and it looks like I'll be able to do that with the tool rest at 90, being that when I sweep the tool up towards the rim, it will now be out of the way, not obstructing the path of the gouge. Okay, that's the important thing. Let's go a little faster. I guess that's as fast as it can go. That's good. It's what we want. And then we'll be good and ready to hollow out. Just cutting with the body. There we go. And that's what I want to see. That's what I want to hear. That's a good sound. Just true that up nicely. But you can see that if I'm shear scraping, I have to account for, obviously, the line that I'm creating. So if I'm creating a really beautiful line or going over one, you can't just keep the tool rest in at 45 degrees. That you have to keep moving the tool rest uphill, okay? And when I'm doing this cut, it should look like that unsupported edge wants to dig. It should almost look like that. There should be about a 1/16 of an inch of a gap, which looks like that's about right there. But that right there, that's a nice surface. Let's make one more cut, like legitimately one more cut, not 5 more. There's that. Okay. So if we stop and take a look at that surface, that's nice and smooth. And beyond being nice and smooth, I have a curve that I want, which is one that is more inward set and breaks very, very fast, very quickly from from the rim, doesn't have any high spots in it. That means it's a full parabolic sweep. That's what I want to see on a bowl like this. So that on any height, if this bowl were placed anywhere on any height, it's going to look good. Okay, and yeah, that's what I want to see. It wouldn't look good, however. We'll say what does not looking good mean? Well, on a bowl this size, if I had the curve break a little bit later towards the base, and it wasn't a sharp inward set curve, but more outward set through here, at the base, it breaks in this area outward like that, in this fashion. You're going to have a bump or a dip right here, and that looks pretty bad to me. As it will look more bottom heavy. I don't want a bottom heavy looking bowl. I want something that's nice and sharp, and its asymmetry, if there's any, can be pronounced on a high level, if it's on a mantle somewhere, or it looks like it's floating in space sitting on top of like a nice dresser. That's what I'm basically aiming for with the classic rim vessel. Okay, so now we'll turn this around, do some hollowing, and with that, I'll go ahead and switch over to some different tools. I'm going to use this tool is now retired. If you guys are hollowing out with something like this, I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that there's a greater likelihood that when you have a wing that's this far extremely swept back, and that's just a below bar conclusion, but that's something I'm going to keep. I want that there. The trouble here is going to be when I swing the tool in, I'm very much likely, when I get a little bit deeper, going to expose a little bit more of the wing. The more wing I expose on a piece like this, the more trouble you run into. You don't need an extremely swept back wing, okay? This is primarily for just shaping, okay? For hollowing, a really extreme sweep, not necessary at all. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying that there will be a time that if you don't have the tool control to do it, that wing will get you in trouble a lot. It'll get you in trouble more than you think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go with go with one of the tools that was passed around and that we have here now, this is going to be a half-inch interior ground tool, and we'll do that. And so this is ground at about, it's ground to about 60 degrees, okay? But there's a secondary bevel on it that's ground at about, the secondary bevel is grounded about 40 to 45. And what that does is it means that the point of the initial point of making that cut is just, I can start at a typical 90-degree plane right here. If I have a 60-degree tool at the very outward set portion of the face, I usually will have to raise the tool up a little bit higher like this so that cutting edge can actually cut. If I sweep the heel back pretty extreme at about 40, 45 degrees, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I want. So, and it looks like having issues with this tool right there. And we'll just take a look at that camera. Let me grab actually, I'll just do it with the 3/8. So for our interior, either 3/8 or half inch is appropriate. So that's a little food for thought there. And let's see what I got for handle. Okay, yeah, we'll do. No, never. No, and but I'll a little disclaimer about carbide and why. Carbide's not bad. It's just that you're not going to get near clean as of a cut. You're just scraping the whole way, unless you're shear scraping on an exterior. It's good for interior hollowing though. But I have to be careful that because I'm an educator, so I don't want to entirely say it's bad because there are good applications for it. Okay, it's good. They're good for hollow forms. Also, people that have maybe have a physical limitation that for some reason that if they're using a gouge or using a tool that I would just say gouge, that the rotation of it is causing them pain for a condition of some kind. I would say that using carbide's better, and you shouldn't criticize someone for using carbide if that's the case. Of course, that's an unkind thing to do. So there's reasons why carbide's good, but I typically find that if you have the health to be able to learn how to use a gouge, learn how to use a gouge. In the long run, you're gonna be a lot better off for it. Okay, and we can hang out. I'm just kidding. Just totally kidding. I'm just being silly. So let's go ahead and then. So what I have here is on this grind for the secondary bevel. That is from the heel to the secondary. That's probably about 40 degrees. That's good. So that means that by and large I'm entering the cut at 40-degree plane. Okay, which is to say that if this entire bevel were ground at 60, I could make some first initial cuts, but then I'll be raising the handle to extremely, like this, because the plane is entirely at 60 with that bevel. So it's going to be always better to start at about 40, 45 degrees. That's going to be a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen not the secondary bevel, but the micro bevel, the actual cutting edge right now, and that'll be good. I'll be able to use this tool probably the entire time, all the way down. So that's nice. That'll be a good thing. And all I need to do this when I'm freehand grinding a tool like this, if we can take a look, it's platform ground from here to there, and then I switch over to the left hand from here to there. So when I have my left hand on the tool here, I'm grinding the tool this way. It's kind of like this, and then the right, like that. I'm just touching this up. Again, I'm never starting at the center of the tool on the nose. That's a nice grind. That's probably grounded about 55, 60 degrees. Close enough to it. One of the things that Richard Raffin never did, and I'll go ahead and actually sharpen the heel. Richard Raffin uses scrapers religiously, and I don't agree with that, but I've never seen someone have a softer touch with a scraper. I've never quite seen that. He's amazing. Yes? He in recent years, which his recent years would be, would account for the last 10 to 15. 10 solid, actually, not 15. 10, yeah. He's done the asymmetric thing where the left wing was swept back. It wasn't as extremely swept back as that one, but the right was not. The right was there because the majority of his hollowing cuts were going to be leading with the right wing. So yeah, so that's correct. So I advocate for that, but for my exteriors, I typically like to rough down with the wing, with a pretty good swept back wing, cut my tendons with it, be able to cut a nice shoulder, and then when I turn a piece around, also trip the exterior with that same swept back wing as well, so that I can, I can shear scrape. So that's how I see it. So now we'll go do some hollowing. Nice thing about the 3/8 is I can go ahead and just take this straight in. Typically, I don't have any catches except for the one I just started out with. So it's kind of like this. I'm not looking to go too far down. I'm only looking to go maybe, I don't know, maybe about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. The nice thing about the secondary grind, or the secondary bevel, is I can create really beautiful, clean interiors. When I get to that much material right there, you don't go all the way through it. You stop, you plant the tool, or some people say anchor. I say plant it on the tool rest for the sake of pivoting. When you say anchor, the word anchor I don't like because it connotes the idea that you're just keeping the tool right here, and you're just maybe doing this. But if you want to plant the tool to then be able to pivot. Okay, that's the whole point. Remember, it's spinning much slower down through here, so I can't take the force out of here. I can't dig the material out. You do actually let the wood come to the tool. That's what we want to see. I'm not going to go deeper than that for this initial pass until I get down to the rim. I want to get down to that same height, or that same depth. Another cut to make is if you switch hands like this, you can go that way, and then go under like this. I think that's a really strong cut. I like doing that. Sorry, get out of your guys' way. I'm watching the video too. I'm like, who's this guy turning? I was like watching that for a second. So when I make these cuts, I'm leading with the right wing. Switch hands around if I want. That takes me all the way through. It's like that. And we'll go thin. I think that's a good wall thickness right there. It's decent. And I'll go ahead and round this over a bit. And when I round that over, I'll probably be a little bit better off using the swept back wing. Oh, actually, I'll go ahead and actually use a smaller 1/4 inch for this. Little fine detail work. I want to sweep in towards the rim, or sorry, in towards the where the actual exterior diameter begins. It's like that. That's going to be okay. It's also not a bad idea to have a little bit of an undercut rim in here, just enough that if I want to use a jam chuck with it, I can. That's what I want to see. That interior, that's a nice little interior. I'm happy with that. Yeah, that'll be looking, that's looking good. Pretty thin, pretty thin. Yep. Keep leading in. So notice what I'm doing is I'm hollowing sectionally. It's the whole idea of ensuring that the amount of mass that I have is there to remain all the way down towards the center, so as to then allow me to make cuts here. I don't want to initially hollow all the way to the very base and then just end up, trying to get into a thin rim and see how that works out. It's not going to. It's not going to work out. It will not work out. You have to make sure that you're hollowing sectionally, so you start out maybe diving in about an inch, ½ inch to a full inch, and then take it down a little bit further, and then the last cuts should be a commentary on having a little bit more to take out right here, and seeing that I'm really close to that base. So I'm on my bottom third right now, getting close to the very end, so that's good. No tear out. And so for a piece like this to finish, what you'd want to do is you want to go ahead and you can actually. I don't want to create a lot of dust in here. What I'll do is I'll wet sand with an oil that I have. I have just some walnut oil with me, and so that'll work. I'll do some wet sanding. If you have dry wood, you want to wet sand with oil, the oil that you'd be finishing with. If you're working with green wood, you'd want to wet sand with water. Okay, that's typically how you do it. That's how I do it. What I don't want to do is this. I don't want to start down here and then just start and pluck the material out. Start from the largest portion of the diameter, work your way in, okay? All I'm doing with the left hand is ensuring that when I'm over here, very much like the skew chisel, I don't want to kick over here, so I want to make sure that there's a finger back here or something that's allowing me to, when I enter that cut, that unsupported edge on here doesn't kick back. I have less of a problem with that when I'm dealing with a more blunt ground tool. Again, this is grounded about 50 to 60 degrees. More like 60 degrees. And when I'm this thin, I really want to slow the speed down a little bit. That's for the sake of when I actually that's just for the sake of to remove whatever chatter that I would possibly experience down through here. If you can hear this, you'll be able to hear the chatter now. All of that, I want to cut that down. So listen to that sound. Let's listen to where the sound goes away. Probably near about 400 RPM. Yep, 600. So you have to make sure that if you're turning thinner, that's to say thinner than 1/2 an inch, that's a little bit larger rim, just because I want that display quality. I want a little bit larger rim. The bowl itself, though, it feels nice. That's probably about all the way through. I'd say probably about quarter of an inch, maybe a little thinner. But I want to make sure that when I'm down here on this last little area, that I want to pick up that last ridge. I don't want to have this effect right here. It's too fast. I mean, I can cut it, but what I'll do is I don't want it lead in with a great amount of chatter hitting off that bevel and then just diving in like that. I want to hit that with a nice slow speed to be able to just bring that in. There we go. Now when I actually pick it up, then I can speed it up. But you don't want to start the cut near a ridge at a very high speed. That's what you don't want. Okay? Good shavings. Feels good. So I'll probably start sanding that at around probably about 180. It's probably all it really needs. That's a pretty clean cut. The qualities of a good bowl are one that with the actual bottom of the interior isn't flat, but it's the actual lowest point of the piece. So I've got to be able to make sure that when I'm doing this, I'm relying on feel, very much so. And it's a little bit of a high spot right in there. The finish is good. There's some burnish marks, but those will come right out. Nonetheless, I think starting at about 180 will be a decent spot. We'll eliminate any to all of those burnish marks. So let's go ahead and slow the lathe down again. Back to the area where you're going to see a lot of the chatter. It's going to be right here. The mid portion of the piece is where the inertia has picked up, and when on a thinner wall vessel, which that's probably under 1/4 of an inch. Okay, that's thin. So I need to make sure that I'm starting at about 400 to 600 RPM right here again. I'll start about where I was. I'll put one more little final edge on here, and we'll probably call this piece good in terms of it turning. There, nice little final shape there on that tool. 600 RPM. Now I can pick up the speed. The reason I'm making these cuts is to ensure that when I make them, reason for them is to make sure that the interior is the lowest portion, and when I drag my hand, I don't feel a flat spot. It's got to be a nice full round interior. And let's see if I start up here. I'm going to go down again, slow it down. The issue with, again, thin material, this is even better. When I'm turning really, really green material, which this is not green at all, if I was turning really green material, I'd be probably turning this slow right in here, right in this area, okay? Very slow. So you don't want to speed it up. You want to actually slow it down at the very end if you're under 1/4 of an inch. That eliminates most to all of the chatter. If I go all the way through, the tendency is that I'll just tear out. I should stop at the very end so I have a little bump right there. And that's not what I want, but I'm going to come back, make those the last few cuts. Here and there. Just like that. And that's the interior. So that's done. I'm happy with that. You guys have any questions while I'm getting some sanding done over here?
Do you ever use this 40-40 grind somebody talks about?
No, I don't use that. No, but it has good merit. It's a good idea though. I like the idea of it, but I don't personally use it. There are times where I probably accidentally end up with it because I need something that's around 40 instead of something that's sharper. 40 is a great grind to be at. 40 degrees is good, but no, I don't personally use one. Make an effort a dedicated effort to use 40. I don't need that.
We look at that man too, and you
So yeah, of course. It's not a trade secret anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Never trade secret. No. So anyways, I'll start with some 180 guys, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow the lathe down to, well, maybe slower than that, to apply it. And all I want to do is put a penetrating oil on this, and I'm going to do some wet sanding. Nice thing about wet sanding is that I can raise the grain while I'm doing this, so I should end up with a piece that feels more or less like porcelain, have porcelain quality feel to it. Once I go through, say what? This is walnut oil. Yeah, walnut oil. This is walnut oil. So I want to apply that oil now. Okay, and I'm going to do a little wet sanding. I'm not going to go real fast when I wet sand, but just apply a little bit of oil, do some sanding. That's 180. Don't need too much sanding on this. It's pretty clean. What you're seeing are burnish marks, but that's clean. So let's go ahead and start with that interior. Yes, sir. Of course.
can you use the wet sand? Can you use that walnut oil regardless of what finish you put in the mold?
You want it, so if I wouldn't do that. No, so this would be food safe. So if this was going to be used, and let's just say food safe, I'm going to use that for a salad or put cookies in, and that'll inevitably be washed or it'll hit water at some point. I don't want to put poly in there and close the pores. I want to be able to, and you could probably, the trouble is the dry time, because the walnut oils, it doesn't, even if it's heat treated, the way Mahoney makes it, it's great, but it's still, it'll still not fully oxidize. I'd say fast enough to where if you put something like a poly in there, I think the finish would go blotchy. It's going to be blotchy. So I would, so no, not really. For me, this would be the finish that I would use with this. And you'd never want to wet sand with polyurethane. There'd be no real reason to do that. That would just gum up the finish entirely. So I want to do a few things here. One is I'll place a little oil in here. Sand this at the same time. I find it's a little easier if I stand reverse, just because hitting the upswing is a little bit easier standing here. Okay, and I'll actually apply it here. I like to apply the oil and sand at the same time. What you're doing is we're raising that grain. That's what we want to do, raise that grain. Round this over just a little bit. Water or wine, walnut oil is probably the best. Walnut oil. The heat treated. Yeah. I mean, in all most finishes nowadays, I would say most to all, there hasn't been lead in finishes since maybe the mid '80s. It's been a while. So really, they're all food safe once they oxidize at this point, for the most part, as long as it's not.
Is the oil going to protect the wood from absorbing the liquid cracking down the line?
Well, that's more commentary. That not so much. That's more commentary on just on the inherent moisture level. So something I would just say you need about for anything like that. You'd need you'd better off with a roughed out piece. You want to rough something like that out from green stock first. Wait about 6 months. You need about 6 months. Yep.
You would just do a walnut oil.
I would put wax on it, and I would put a coat of probably a coat of Mylans, And then after that, what I do is I put some carnival wax on it with the Beal. That's usually how most of my finished pieces go to. If that something's going to ship out, that's what I would typically do. Yeah. But a little bit of wet sanding goes a long way because we're also filling the pores here too. The slurry that you see in there is filling the pores. That's a good thing. But you want to do this. You don't want to, you don't want to be standing here all day. You want to focus on clean cuts. That's why basically this bowl is pretty much sheer burnished. I'm just basically getting out the burnish that's on here more than anything. That's what you want to see. So after this grit, it's going to look pretty good. And then the exterior will sand really nicely, nice and easy. So just a little bit of oil goes a long way. Then I'll go ahead and round that rim. I like when I'm seeing a nice rim that the view of it has a nice tactile feel. And one that's, to me, very sharp is no good. What you're hearing right there is just a little bark inclusion. A little bit of wet sand there. Maybe one little last round of oil on the interior, and then maybe switch to another grit. Yeah, this is Mahoney's. Yep. That's the standard. And let's do a little bit more here. That'll work okay. It's not mixed this way for finishing. You don't want to. That's typically not something you're going to want to do. Is that stuff typically not good for finish in this way? I'd recommend talking to Mike. He'll actually mix them for you. He mixes mine. His stuff is great. It's the best. I think it is, at least. I use it regularly. It's pretty much the standard for utility finishes is Mahoney's finish. Say what? He makes it. He will sometimes mix them a little differently for what people want. So he will do that sometimes. This is just the standard right here. Oh, you guys, hold on. Let's take a look at that interior. So that's good right there. You guys see? Look at that. So that's just with one grit. That's nice. That's just after 180 right there, okay? That's just after 180. Not bad. You get a better look on the interior when I go through one more grit. So I'll go ahead and do exterior 180. Exterior 180, then probably just do one more grit. What's No. Just no. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Oh, I heard that. I didn't know you were so mean, Tim. Yep, that's true. We are people, aren't we? That's how it works. So, a little bit of exterior sanding. Typically, when I'm doing this, guys, I like to make sure that I'm applying the oil and I'm sanding at the same time. Okay? A little bit of oil and sandpaper. Okay? So I'll go from this and just go to more of a finished grit, which will be maybe around. I'll go maybe 320, 220 or 320. Actually, 220 will be better. I do, and because I have a reserve of stock that's used for dry, and the dry pieces that I make are typically, and this is not an example. This is just at this end. This is very dry. So something like this, I would typically make thicker, but no, I will use the drill constantly with a thicker vessel.
It seems like you would get more sanding lines.
Yeah, yeah, you do. But the oil, you do. That's correct. And that's also, when you wet sand, it's kind of a magic thing. What happens is you're filling the pores, and as the grain's raising, you're not going to get near as much streaking either. So if you want to sand dry, so if you want to sand dry this way, that is to say not with, that is without the hook and loop pad, this is a much better way. You won't have any streaks. Now, I mean, not to say that if you do, you just didn't do it right, but you'll have far fewer if you wet sand. Far fewer. Far fewer. Yeah, wet sanding is great. Yeah, you won't. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a good technique. And so what you don't want to do is rely on the fact that if you do it this way, that you know you're not going to get as many streaks, and then just hack a bowl up and start from 40 grit. You know, that's what you don't want to do. You want to still make this the most sheer burnished surface that you can, straight off the tool. So you just got to keep that in mind. But then I'll just do one more grit. We don't need to make this an all-day event for sanding. We want to be fairly quick about it. But yeah, wet sanding is the way to go. If you're working dry and you don't happen to have a drill bit and you want to keep the dust down. The other thing in here is that I want to finish this, but I don't want to create a dust cloud in here. That's just so that's another consideration. I don't want to do that in here for you guys.
We did that yesterday.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. We already did that. Never mind. Yeah. It's not because I'm nice. It's just because we already did it. No, I'm just kidding.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. There we go. And let's take a look at that exterior. That's just with one grit. And with that one grit, that's pretty sweet, guys. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. Where are we on time, folks?
Probably need to start wrapping it up.
Wrapping it up? Okay. Let's do maybe one more grit and call it good. And you guys can let's do one more grit so we can take a look at a pretty good quality surface. And this is a bowl I'd say if I had to rate it, I'd give it I give it a no. What? Did you say 8? That's too high for me at the moment. I'd give it about a 6.9. 6.89. No. I'm brutal. Oh, I'm brutal. I'm really brutal. That's on myself, though, and I have to be. The standard that I have to employ as a professional is very high. So when people ask, so I was just at the Rocky Mountain Wood Center. Some of you saw that I had a video out there. I was just in Loveland. Had a great time out there. They're a lot of fun. It's nicer than you guys. You guys are so mean. You guys are great. You guys have been great. No, I have fun usually everywhere. You guys have been fabulous. So let's go with one more grit. Yes, sir.
Graciously allowed us to video this, and I will be putting the video up, but initially I'll make it only available to those who pay, and then maybe 3 or 4 months down the road I'll make it available to the rest of the club.
You sound like a capitalist.
It's not gonna happen right away, as my videos are sometimes 4 to 6 months behind,
No.
but I will send you a link too, just so you can look at yourself.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Beyonce, you don't wanna see how you look.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. She sees me all the time. But she should have been here on this trip. You guys will meet her someday. She's lovely. She's wonderful. She's my she's my far better half. Far better.
If you haven't looked at the
Far
website
better.
the last couple of days, it looks different, but the same information is still there. That's always mine.
So guys, let's go to is that it? I'm gonna just finish this up. Oh, you mean like you just did? No. Wood turning should be fun, guys. I'm glad you guys are fun. It's a lot of crazy things have happened in the world. We know that. Glad we can smile and laugh a little bit. If you guys want to learn wood turning, the good thing about remote demonstrations is that they're available to see whenever. So if you have some experience, it's good to watch them, and they're good. But I find that the true lifeblood of wood turning is in here, where you're actually learning from someone who spent the time doing it, as professionally or not, but nonetheless the camaraderie exists and is available right here. And that's something that human beings need, is they need to be able to congregate and get together and meet. That's what we're doing. We're social creatures. We should do that. But again, that's not a commentary on saying remotes are bad. Remote demonstrations are really wonderful, and I'm glad that you guys are getting into all that. And you guys are everyone's doing it. So it's a good thing to see, and I'm glad that element of offering for wood turning is available. I'm very glad to know that. So just a little. We won't have the time to get rid of that, so we'll just pretend like it's not there. Yeah, for this round. But what I would do is I would create it. I wouldn't create a I wouldn't create a friction drive. I would just create I would create an actual jam chuck where I would just fit this on a lip and I'd turn it without tailstock support. I can show you a video where I'm doing that in recent time. I want you to see that. Do we have time? Oh, here it goes. Oh, okay, that's a little the Magnolia Spirit, right? Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's brutal. I love it. Okay, so let's call that good on this interior. We'll take a little bit more here, and I want you guys to see the quality of that finish. Yeah, yeah. Fire up the chainsaw. I feel proud of myself that I have not shot oil on anyone. That's good. But myself, I've shot it on me. I've shot it on me though. It is. I'm moisturizing right now. Got to moisturize. You don't know what it's like being me. You don't know. I didn't. We don't need to do that. All right. All right, guys. Just about there. So a couple grits you can see, and these are very high grits. This is 220. So 180, 220. If you can sand up to these two grits, you're in good business, and you're cutting really clean. That's what this means. So it should feel nice and soft and smooth. It does. Put a little bit more oil, and that'll be good. Let's slow this down. 220, or yeah, about. Okay. You guys will see that this feels kind of nice, like porcelain. So again, that's just with a couple grits. And here we go. Yeah. Oh, here's that. There's the other one. There we go. No, I got it. Cool. We good? There's that. Cool. Perfect. All right, so it is. It's very special. So there's that, guys. Nice finished piece. 99% finished. I want you guys to check that out. So just with a couple grits, you can see you can get a pretty good surface with that wet sanding. So I'm filling the pores nicely. If I went up maybe just a couple more, this would have been nice. This would have been, I would have given it maybe I don't know, maybe an 8. No, it's a 6.9. 6.9. A 10. A 10. Well, 10 is a little arrogant. 10 is to say that it's perfect, obviously, and to say it's perfect means you don't ever have to make another one, and that's a little crazy. I want to keep making them, so I'm never going to give myself a 10. I'll give myself a.
Would it be something Mahoney turned with a 10?
You might. I could. There's many ways. There are many ways you could answer that, and I'll not use a particular name, but there's certain people that you might ask who are the greatest. All you have to do is ask them; they'll tell you that they are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought 10 was invisible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what you say, but the response to that is and I love a heckler that thinks they're great. You say welcome to the room, that you say, you pick the name and you say, let's just say Matt Monaco. He's the greatest woodturner in the world. Just ask him. Okay, so we have a good sense of humor. But then that's just a couple grits. Yeah. Okay, that's 180 and 220. So what I would have liked to do is go up to go to about 400, and that would feel like porcelain. That'd be porcelain. So.
Maybe you want to take it home and do that. No, seriously, I mean, then bring it back.
You could. Why don't you? Yeah. Just don't give it to Sammy Long. Who? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, who? Yeah, some dude that carves stuff. One of those guys sitting down 16 hours.
He'd be that sitting down there with a car.
One of those people. Flowers and snakes. Magnolia trees.
It's an honor to have you, and I can't quit
Come on, let him do it. Andy. That wasn't very. You guys are.
Any questions for us?
Yeah, is there still a lot of black walnut in Southwest?
A lot.
Used to be a lot.
A lot. Yep. It's getting poached though. People get on farms and they cut it and steal it and sell it. It's not an uncommon thing. So when I get black walnut, I'm always anyone that gets black walnut now is usually quite grateful. Very slow growing, not as well managed. So we do have the fortune of being in an area that's black walnut rich. So I'm very happy about that. But how often do I get it? Not as near as much as I'd like. We get a lot of cherry though, a lot of cherry, but a lot of very spalted soft maples, which I love to turn the most. Plenty of butternut, yeah, and there's plenty of that to go around. Yeah, I mean that's a variety of walnut, yeah, and butternut's good. It's okay, it's softer. It's called white walnut. Yep. But there's plenty out there.
Whereabouts in Missouri could we buy that
Say what?
butternut? Whereabouts could we buy that butternut?
Buy the butternut? Buy it? Well, you could cut it. I could show you where I cut my materials, and you'd find some. I mean, you could go to my wood pile. I'd let you know where my wood pile is, and then you'd end up lost because I'd lied about the location. So come on down, Herman. Come on down. I hope you do. Oh, we'll take care of you. We'll take care of you. Yeah. Elaine and I. Oh, we'll take care of you. We'll treat you good. I'll be a lot nicer to you there than here. Oh. 8'2"? Nah, no, that's way too high. 6'9". 6'9". It is. Yeah, it is. It's not my favorite. If I get, because you get butternut, you're like, I wish it was black walnut. That's what you say to yourself the whole time home. Butternut, yes. Wish it was black walnut. So, yeah. But you see on that rim though, it's a little undercut. I typically will make a bowl like that a little undercut, so that when I make a 10 into, and I'll show you a little video real quick. I want to show you guys where I would finish that off. Okay, here it is. So you guys can pass this around. I'll show you that you can see the actual video. Oh yeah, we could do that, huh? It's like technology and stuff. Yeah, it's an Instagram video where I'm doing that. I'm showing the actual. So basically, what I would do is create a lip, and I make jam chucks. I don't make friction drives often. It'd be something like. Okay. So you can see this. Let me go back so that you can actually take a look. So you guys watching, you can see that. Just place it on like that. So that'd be a piece right there. And the video sucks. So why don't I go ahead? The quality is not good. It would be better if I found the original source of that video, and that should be right over here. You guys can, here we go. And I'll just start it again. But what I do is I'll just create a little lip, and what I do is I want to make sure that the piece I have, you'll see that it's a little undercut. It's undercut so that I can then fit that lip, and it won't actually. It'll have a little bit more holding power, a little staying power. But if I start over here, there we go. There's that, and I just place it on like that. Oftentimes I just keep it spinning like that. So that's typically what you'd be looking at for the base right there.
So even as shallow as this is, that'll fit.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. That'll work. Yep.
So as a production earner, how do you price your
Usually $1 per minute, and then I decide if I want to add on top how much I want to mark up depending on who I'm selling it to. That would be the business I'm selling it to. But it's $1 a minute wholesale, and then after that would determine my wholesale price for something. Then after that, what else I put on top of that is a number of different things. Could be the amount of time that I spent cutting the material if it was difficult. It could be, and I just come up with different prices. But typically, $1 a minute is where you want to have your base price for wholesale work, and that's usually enough to be within a range of acceptability for for people's wallet. Typically, that's where people will want to be able to purchase something. You can't sell a bowl like that for you can't sell a bowl like the one that I just made. It doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to sell it for like $300. You might pick maybe somewhere, but I can't rely on some vacationing person from wherever to just buy stuff like that. That's too much. But it should cost, and it should reflect the actual amount of work that went into it. So I find that when you that's it's called Richard Raffin math. He would say something about like $1 a minute is about what it takes to be able to create a wholesale price. And I found that in my metric of creating prices, that tends to be about within the range of acceptability that people can absorb, the price the market can absorb, on based on various types of products. That's usually the case.
If you wouldn't demoing that, having to stop and explain it to us, what would it take? What kind of time frame?
Oh, to do just if I was making something like that, all the way through, and there was no questions, and I wasn't narrating and talking about it. That bowl right there, that would take probably about 25 minutes, maybe, and that would be finished. That would be with the bottom cut off with the yes, yeah. Now I wouldn't so that would be with the 2 grits about 25 minutes, probably a little less than a half hour.